Episode 21 of Black, Brown, Yellow, White. Today I'm very happy and excited to have with us Xueting C. She is an editor, translator, and critic whose work bridges Chinese speculative fiction, mythology, and pop culture with the English-speaking world. From Xia legends, Sinofuturist visions of the future, she brings hidden voices and untold stories, China's streets, alleys, and digital futures to our global audiences, challenging who gets to tell their stories and how. So, thank you very much for being here today. And yeah, maybe you can give us your biopic from your perspective, how you arrived at this point in time.
As an immigrant writer, I was born in Guangzhou and emigrated to the UK with my family as a teenager. So a lot of my life has been about translating not only languages, but cultural translation. So I guess that's the basis that inspired the direction of my career. There is a lot of branches and a lot of experiences. But I guess we can start with that.
Yeah. So maybe you can give us just a brief idea how you ended up in publishing, editing, and translating works of Chinese fiction. How did that come about?
So I studied English literature at university, and after graduating, I wanted to do something related to my heritage culture and kind of talk about it in my second home, as it were. So I started by translating some contemporary Chinese literature, in fact, a graphic novel, into English, though at the time I found that the world was not so interested in China as in contemporary. And it was about early 2000s. At the time, I saw a lot of great output when I went to Beijing to live and study postgrad after my university. So I still wanted to really work with books. So I went into the UK industry of publishing instead. And then alongside that, the day job, I began writing about Chinese culture from different perspectives. And it was really that began to take off. And then a decade or so later, the interest and China's position in the world changed. There's more interest in China as a contemporary culture, and a lot more exchange in terms of trade and other things. So then I finally got the chance to curate my own anthology, 15 years after I started in the field, during which I took whatever translation jobs I could alongside the writing, and also did talks around the country, whatever opportunities I can find to kind of talk about different aspects of contemporary Chinese culture, from animation to tea to indie music and all sorts. So, and then when I got the opportunity so that was slightly after I got to write my first nonfiction book. It was on Chinese deities, but from a socio-cultural point of view. And then from then on, I've been doing a mixture of short form writing, translating, and also writing the books, and the alternating between nonfiction, cultural writing, and the fiction curation translation.
Thank you very much for setting the stage of you as the main protagonist. And now it would also, I think, be very relevant and interesting to know what are your sources of inspiration? What is the spark that animates your work? Art, literature, cinema, there's always a multiplicity of inspirations. So for you, what is this spark?
The spark, there's been many sparks. So I grew up really reading a lot of the classical literary canon of Anglophone literature. That is, I think, I'm afraid, because of the time that I grew up, there was not so much awareness of diversity and such many different kinds of literature written by different peoples available at the time. So it was mainly Anglophone literature. I read a lot of the classics growing up. That's what inspired me to study English literature and work with books. But then later on, I met all kinds of different friends at university that introduced me to science fiction. Of course, there was the movies and the TV along with that too. And now I've had to really catch up on science fiction, fantasy. So I read a lot of the classic science fiction to begin with, and then I found a lot of fantasy works that are more attuned to my sense of mythos, coming from an Asian point of view rather than the Greco-Roman mythology that people are more used to. Europe and US. So that really got me back into fantasy as such, and now and in the past decade or so, I've been catching up on reading writers who are like myself, women writers, writers with color, and it's been a great journey. So my inspiration is Asian, African, European, American, all kinds. And I'm as an approach as a writer, I always give people a brief history. I always find out about how things started, how it developed, and where things are now. So I'm very much interested. My influences also come a lot from the past and present. So it's literally a lot of things.
Very much. At this point, we will come to these topics again in the second half. At this point, we dive off the cliff into the deep end and get to the heart of this interview series with the big, difficult question: what to you is racism? What's your understanding of it? And could you maybe share some of your either experiences or observations?
Oh, that's a big question. So racism, I think we can put it in the way that that, like sexism or homophobia or transphobia, it is really a group of people, assuming that people like these are kind of assuming their superiority perhaps over these group of people and saying they're different or they're not allowed. And it has taken had many masks. More recently, is taking the form of, well, the systems of government and our systems of government and politics is not as advanced or inferior in certain ways, or not viable, legitimate. So it's taken many forms. And in terms of on a individual level, I would say there is the everyday, in terms of people like us, like the ethnic minorities, BIPOC people, diaspora, living in the Western world, per se, we experience, there is unfortunately still overt racism, experienced daily, and that, although there's not as much, and this is linked to the historical racism, which is written in the laws. And we know now the laws are a lot better. They're not by far from perfect in various countries, but we have a memory of that history still. And then, so apart from the overt racism, which is you get it in sometimes and not, and then there is the ingrained racism that is not overt, but people maybe aren't even aware of. And then there is the institutional racism, which we do have quite a bit in the UK, where it concerns culture and concerns society.
Is there something about racism in the UK that you, and not just in the UK, also racism nowadays, that strikes you as particularly salient?
Now, so I think a lot of current issues kind of pertains to the systems of government, the view that there is only one form of democracy and it's the only form of legitimate government, whereas we need a more nuanced approach to this, an understanding of the background of the nations, their histories, and there is no one form of political system that works for everyone. A kind of multipolarity is what we need at the moment. And so this happens in terms of my everyday life, but also for my work. In terms of everyday life, it would be things like during the pandemic, my neighbor's child saw me and they ran away. It started running away from me, being called Corona on the streets, things like that. And I went to a concert the other day, and this man, I got separated. He separated me between me and my partner. And when I intervened, he asked me to speak English. So it's instances like that that you experience every day. I didn't used to experience as much before, that unfortunately it's gotten worse for Asians, East Asians, and perhaps for other minority groups elsewhere as well, and for different reasons. And then for my work, it is the more kind of ingrained a bias I need to deal with, that people are not necessarily. So I've worked with a lot of middle class Western people. So they know it's not to be. They're aware they cannot be overtly racist. But there are a lot of assumptions and misperceptions and kind of set ways of behavior that are still happening. In terms of so in terms of people I've worked with, everybody has an idea of what they think it's Chinese. Sometimes it's very far from a nuanced view. And in terms of my career, it has affected me quite substantially in terms of career path. Because very early on, I applied for an editorial position at quite a big publisher, and I was told I wasn't eligible for it because I wasn't born in the UK, and at the beginning of me trying to translate Chinese contemporary literature. The field was quite monocultural, and I was told, I was made to understand. It was heavily implied that my English was perhaps not good enough to be a translator because I am a diaspora rather than white. Bluntly, some of this has really improved, and some other issues still we have a long way to go.
Yeah, thank you for sharing these difficult experiences and your thoughts so clearly. So think of racism as this crawling, shape-shifting, stupid monster. I like to mention a kind of counterforce, which is this bright and constantly evolving constellation of diversity. And in your view, what does diversity look like, and what's important or significant about diversity?
I think for a start, do we really want to use the word diversity? I mean, I use it myself, but maybe in the future, I see maybe we use multiculturalism rather than that, because diversity immediately assumes that you have something that's normal and then normative and then something that diverges from that, and maybe separating the groups, whereas I think there's a lot of the overlapping is always what I think is quite interesting. The differences are certainly fascinating. So in the future, I hope that things will move to a multicultural world where there is no one way that is more, we're not centered on any particular perspective. We have a multiple polar kind of society or cultural worldview.
And what would you say is the status? I'll use this term now. What is the status of multiculturalism in science fiction and fantasy?
Science fiction has great potential to be multicultural. In terms of Anglophone science fiction, though, I think it is still fairly Euro-American centric, although in the last decade or so, a lot of publishers are commissioning writers from different cultures, from other cultures. We're seeing a lot of, and readers have a wider science fiction horizons. We're reading a lot more works and seeing a lot more works on the markets from people of color, queer writers, and neurodivergent writers. So I think that we still have some way to, I mean, in terms of Asian science fiction and Chinese science fiction, I feel like we're really, really comfortable with kind of diaspora science fiction, or maybe we're getting more comfortable with diaspora science fiction. But there is still kind of the tendency to see something that originally came from another language, translated it wherever that is, and a different thing to the wider science fiction field. And I think it should be seen on a par with that, or incorporated into the debate. So, for example, when I regularly attend events and festivals and conventions, I think I tend to be put on the translated panels, or something along those lines, rather than the science fiction panel or the horror. Or I would be on a panel with all different horror fiction, rather than just horror fiction, but providing a different view. So I would like us to get to that point one day, to bring in the translated fiction into the main debate, whatever the literary genre is.
It's interesting. Then I would like to try to link it now, if possible, a bit more to your work, starting with a very straightforward question in the beginning. In what ways, in your opinion, can literature handle these unpleasant realities of discrimination, be it racism, sexism? How can it approach these or combat reality?
There are several ways I can think of, and a lot of writers already do that. One way is that we have stories about these difficult things that really happened, the history, the war, the conflict, the genocide, the exiles, and then through story, we enable the readers to learn about these conflict and to learn from them, and hopefully that we as a human race will not make the same mistake again, or to kind of understand why these peoples might have certain views because of this thing happened to them, and kind of just be more aware of this. And then another way is to normalize the multi-ethnicity in the world building, or the queerness in the world building. That's also a way to do that. And then a third one I can think of is to simply feature more representative voices, whether it's othered cultures or queer writers or neurodivergent writers, just to have their own voices out a bit more.
Thank you very much for putting that so clearly. The next one is a bit more provocative, but I mean, I don't mean to needle you, but it's an open question. What to make of Sinofuturism, and how do you engage with this concept? Maybe you don't even find this useful way of thinking about it?
I think it's still a useful way of thinking about it. I think it has been a term that's been quite contentious within academia and within the science fiction field, because Sinofuturism used to be a very Orientalist view. So we have kind of Western writers using the chinoiserie, for example, in their science fiction, whether it's the red lanterns in the Chinatown district, or kind of the trappings, the bamboo, the kind of overtly Chinese things. If the a character who's on the run, they're hiding. They're always hiding in Chinatown, or behind some restaurant, or characters dressed in who are minor characters who are Chinese, dressed in very stereotypical ways. So, and then it's an Orientalist view originally, this term, that's kind of used by the people outside of the Sinosphere, outside of the culture, about people within. But now I think that it's my view that Chinese writers have reclaimed this term as such, as I've amply learned through my reading of Chinese science fiction and curation, that they're writing their own futures. Oh, and I should mention that the original Orientalist Sinofuturist view is always everything is awful. It's like a dystopia. usually feel it's a polluted future. It's fueled by a techno nightmare. This is kind of typical kind of literary Sinofuturist futures. But now, if you read a lot of contemporary science fiction within the last 30 years, it's not within the last 30 years, maybe more recently. Or 20, it's not been like that. It's more nuanced. It's not that catastrophes don't necessarily happen, but they do happen, and then we have, I hope, some kind of resolution or some kind of transcendence that happens as well in your story. So this is the way in which the writers are reclaiming Sinofuturism, and also they're also representing, they're looking back into the mythology and into the tradition, into the classic, and extrapolating a lot of those elements into the future. For example, you get a lot of interactions with Taoism and mythology in China at the moment, not just in science fiction, but also to look at China's space program. A lot of it is named after the gods. So they're like the new space gods in a way. So they're representing this classical culture properly, the traditional culture properly, in their visions of the future. So I think there is definitely something in that term still.
Looking or observing a bit here from Switzerland, from the West, developments, technological developments in China, I always or very often have the impression that it's already living in the future. If you look at the public infrastructure, the trains, the robots that are being built, the AI, all these things. So I'm curious, the concept and the idea of Sinofuturism, how does it influence your work of curating and translating Chinese short fiction? And how does it come into the present almost?
What does it influence? I guess there is always, it provides a lot of impetus. I think that's one of the things that fuels science fiction. You can have maybe other reasons like the start of a new political era in which, scientists are science is very much promoted, and other, so for example, like the science fiction, Chinese science fiction of the 50s. But then right now, it's a lot of science fiction is fueled by the advancement in technology. That's another drive for science fiction. It's very interesting. I see a lot of writers interacting with the technology that is coming out right now, that's happening right now. Maybe taking it slightly further, maybe imagining different uses for it. So, for example, the artificial intelligence, the use of AI is a prime example. So whereas it used to be that writers imagine the future, that was the primary goal of science fiction, now, or kind of what will happen, what might happen, but now it's also what might happen and what are the implications of this? What are the impact on society? So it's a more reflective process now, I find, in science fiction. So it's not because you have technology, it's catching up with the future, with the present, with science fiction so quickly. I think writers are thinking a lot about, okay, what if this one piece of technology is used in this way? What would happen to society? Or how about if we put this technology on a different planet? Or thinking about the impact of science rather than kind of imagining what will happen.
Yeah.
Or as well as.
The next question is circling back a bit to the original topic of discrimination, and so the language is always a bit difficult to find, but for you as a person of Chinese heritage and navigating inside the West European publishing scene, the translation circuits, the fandom spaces, kind of how do you process or respond to such situations of discrimination?
Thank you. I'm really glad you asked that question, because I was thinking that I really wanted to discuss how being an immigrant mainland Chinese writer, the issues surrounding that. So I kind of straddle various spheres of diversity. We still use this term right now.
Yeah.
So being an Asian, a woman, and a queer writer, somebody from the immigrant rather than diaspora, then there is a neurodivergent. So these are the several the spheres that I need to navigate as a writer. And I think for people like us who are working in culture and the arts, who are at the forefront of this, any kind of discrimination, it does come out in our daily work as such. So how do I navigate this? So there are, where do I start? So even to some open-minded, to people who are supposed to be open-minded, tell them right now about Chinese culture, they would put it through the lens of, is this soft power? And whereas they wouldn't do that to any other country. So that is an issue. And the issue is, as my mainland perspective, which I have maintained, it has certain connotations to it. In the past, a kind of backwardness, shrewdness, and now it's it is all brainwashed and no free will, and neither of which are very helpful. And I'm trying to represent these, give some more voices to this 1.4 billion people. And the writers I'm translating are individuals, just like any other writers. Their works are, created from their minds. A lot of them have second jobs as well, like day jobs as well. So it's really not easy for them to do that. And it's just as much as some of their readings, their influences, their literary skills and experiences as other writers, but also within this ecosystem of the Chinese society and culture, which is what I want to improve understanding of in the world.
Thank you for again putting this so very clearly. I had an interview with a playwright by the name of Fatima Mumuni. She's German and Swiss, and also has an African heritage. And at one point, because she had been doing years of workshops on racism, at one point she says, ich will nicht mehr die Rassismus-Tante sein. I don't want to be the racism auntie anymore, the person who always talks about this. And she mentioned racism fatigue. So I was interested, do you also have some sort of discrimination fatigue? Does this concept, can you relate to it?
I know I know what she means, because I feel like as a culture writer, people's interest in my work should be first and foremost cultural. I talk about a lot in the arts and entertainment and how this reflects the society that I'm working in. My main remit, which is China and the Sinosphere. However, this is not the case. A lot of the times I need to get past the suspicions of propaganda, and then other forms of somehow linking me to the Chinese state, which I'm completely not. And I need to get past this, and then, if there is open-mindedness, and then move forwards into my proper work as being educational about culture and the arts as such. So there is that. It's not ideal. It's not ideal, and I've spoken to many different audiences, readers, different kinds of readership, whether they're the geeks, the genre fiction, or they're more into Asian culture, or they're more into the literary fiction, or even they're studying Chinese, or that they like C-drama, or they need to do business in China. So different audiences. So as long as I have an inroad, I find how, as long as I have an inroad, then I'm happy. I can't hope for should. I can only work with what there is. But I think that as long as they are prepared to listen and to read and learn, I think there's always room for improvement. And I have many more icebreakers now with Jews Chinese culture. Before, it was the food and the movies. I think in any culture, people, their connections with other cultures is the films or the food. I have people like, I have Three Body Problem, I have Untamed, I have I think it's Yin Yong as well. So I have more cornerstones to work with.
In that spirit, let us actually focus a bit and consider one of your latest and highly acclaimed anthologies. I hope I pronounced this correctly. Sinofuturism.
Yeah, that's perfect.
A celebration of Chinese horror. What challenges did you face, trying to share these hidden voices in Chinese horror with this wider international audience?
What challenges did I face? So one of this was that there was not really a book like it before that gave a perspective on contemporary Chinese horror. So publishers didn't really know how to market it in a way, and it had a bumpy journey into its birth. That was one of the challenges. And I'll talk about the ones that are more related to your channel. The perspectives that we're discussing. So the other one was what I was discussing before, like the kind of polarized views of Asian culture. The fear of Asian eating habits that unfortunately came out of the reportage of COVID and such things. So I've had challenges such as trying to steer the publishers and illustrator away from stereotypical illustrations in the cover art of China, And then I had, unfortunately, a cover reveal. It nearly didn't go ahead because the platform we were working with just started to talk about the book in a way that is not very helpful and frankly a bit racist, that the book is about the horrors of living in China, which is not true at all. It's really asking writers to be afraid with the Chinese rather than of them.
Yeah.
I had to insist on not featuring those views, and going with another platform or going with other platforms. So here are some of the challenges, and I think despite that, I have genuinely felt a lot of love for the book through kind of people's reviews and feedback, direct feedback from readers and reviewers. So that's really, really heartening. And then I think this loops to the point I was making before about how other science SFF from other cultures to get lumped into one group separate from the main discourse. I would really like the book to be considered horror, and fantasy. So there's different genres. There's science fiction, fantasy, horror, and be part of the discussion for different festivals and conventions rather than, okay, do we have a translated fiction panel we can put you on? So there's that as well.
The reader, was there, some moments of surprise, and has any of these reactions maybe also had an impact back on you?
Yes, they always have an impact, whether it's lessons learned or encouragement taken from it, whether it's here is something that has really worked and I thought would work, that's great, or this is something that they would like more of, and in relation to this show, this channel, I have had some comments like saying, is this book about Asian food, Chinese food? Well, not really. I mean, there is a story that is food horror, and because the nation is so food obsessed, I felt like, well, it's only appropriate for me to feature a food horror, but it's not horror about eating food. It's the dish as a ritualistic medium to another world. So this is a horror that features food rather than horror about eating. But inevitably, there is a comment about Asian eating habits, in which I kind of discussed this with my editor, and we kind of anticipated, and in a way, Sinophagia had that name. We came up with the name of Sinophagia because it's a kind of an ironic comment on the fear of Asian eating habits. Mainly because it sounds creepy and it suggests the idea of devouring, which is nice for horror fiction. There is a little bit of that irony that we know that's again get some crazy comments about the title, which is not intended.
I was also struggling a bit to understand the title, but then when I read some of the reviews, it became much clearer, and also how it really undermines these stereotypes types. Yeah. So we already come to this is the second to last section, which we call which I call non-trigger trigger. And they are these triggers for thought, but you can reflect briefly or expand, jump, whichever you prefer. And yeah, we can just jump into it if you're ready.
Okay, I'll give it a go. Yeah.
Guangzhou.
Guangzhou. Okay, so immediately I think home. To me, so do I need to just tell you what I think?
You just what pops into your head.
Yeah. Home, grammar, Cantonese grammar, culture, food, open.
Synopticon.
Book.
Cats.
Cats. Cats. Love and friends.
Eileen Chang.
Eileen Chang. Beauty in women's writing. Chang Sams.
Ghosts.
Ghosts. Ghost stories. Women in white. Yeah, horror fiction, but
Translating.
not translating.
Yeah.
Translate. Culture. In a way, not much, because it feels like second nature to me. So, yeah, I think culture, literature.
Then the next one I think is problematic, but I'll use it. I came across it. The bamboo ceiling.
The bamboo ceiling. Those two words together is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe they're almost contradictory to each other. Bamboo suggests purity, nature, Chinese.
Yeah.
Plants and ceiling is something that's quite restricting. Maybe I think of stereotypical representation, maybe something. Barriers, Orientalist barriers, perhaps. It could be a house.
Yeah.
Cottage.
Yeah. I came across it in terms of like being the equivalent of the glass ceiling for women, for people of Asian heritage, that it's also this institutional and stereotypical impediments that impede the professional progression.
Oh, I see. That's like a glass ceiling, but
yeah,
that's very interesting concept. Yeah, yeah.
Mainland versus Hong Kong identity.
Britain, Cantonese. Mainland versus. Does it have to be versus?
Can be, I guess, together with, in cooperation, anything. Yeah. Okay. Mainland and Hong Kong identity.
I mean, I think Britain versus Chinese, US versus Chinese.
Yeah.
I mean, not wanting to be Chinese versus Chinese. Yeah.
The three body. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, there are many things I feel quite strongly about this because I am Cantonese Chinese, and there is an overlap with Cantonese culture with Hong Kong, and I feel like sometimes this is erased because there is a part in China that also is where Cantonese culture originated from, and sometimes that is not really incorporated when we're talking about Cantonese culture these days. But anyway, yeah, this is not really the brainstorm that you want. Okay.
Then the three body problem.
Liu Cixin, science fiction. Science fiction horizons opening.
And, soft power, which you mentioned a bit already.
Right. Okay. So kind of the West, polarization, misinformation, misrepresentation.
Lost and found in translation.
Yeah, great. That's good. That's true.
Then mythological and cyberpunk China.
Current, cool, creativity, future invention, stories.
Finally, London.
Home, diversity, culture, history.
Thank you. And the last part, this is about basically your personal practices, things that have positively impacted your life. It could be something you do every day, maybe just once a year. Yeah, what are some of these practices that were positive, constructive for you?
Positive practices.
Could be running, could be, I don't know, staring at the moon, any kind of repeating practice that you have found helpful, enjoyable, instructive.
I'm not sure what I mean, yes, I exercise regularly.
Yeah. The next one is a bit tough because I suppose it's a bit tough because you're swimming in this medium, you're totally inundated. But in terms of recommendations for books and movies to our viewership, what are maybe 1, 2, 3 recommendations that you can give where you think, yeah, this is really great stuff?
Books, in terms of any book or in
yeah, I would put it as broad as possible. You know, that really left an impression on you, and yeah, you would recommend it to our viewers to look into these books or look into these movies.
The things I'm reading now.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm reading because my next anthology is a queer anthology of fiction. I'm reading this queer Sinosphere book of essays.
Yeah.
And this is really, really interesting and informative into the queer history in the Sinofuturism world. In terms of fiction, I'm reading T.R. Huchu's Edinburgh Night series. It's just a fabulous protagonist, fabulous writer, and really, really great perspective of African Scottish perspective. And it's great storytelling involving a lot of kind of traditional elements to his culture, but also the history of Edinburgh and Scotland as well. So it's really interesting. And in terms of classics, I've recently read so there's a book. So I finished a book of strange tales by Ji Yun, who is one of the most renowned collectors of strange tales, the form of traditional supernatural writing in China. It's recently been translated into English, and it's like a miscellany of anything that was marvelous, from kind of alien extraterrestrial sightings to ghost stories to new inventions to any kind of strange happening, into urban legends. So I recommend that. And yeah, so it's kind of hard to kind of say what am I, what I would absolutely recommend. There are so many, and so in terms of other things I've been reading, so I'm currently writing a book about martial arts, fantasy, wuxia storytelling. So I've been doing quite a bit of research on the history of the literary tradition and reading some Jin Yong's novels of demigods and semi-devils, which I'm really enjoying. It's the text, I think, flows very well, and I like the kind of world building. And the characters are kind of outside of the central plains, which is kind of the center of the Chinese as a nation, and kind of on the periphery, but the interactions between the two, politically and culturally, quite interesting in terms of Jianghu. And then I'm also reading another classic, another one of these great masters of wuxia, Long, which I'm not as familiar with, but influential and quite different from Jin Yong in that the plots are more spontaneous, they're quicker, more fanciful, impressive, and more interacting with kind of modern genres like spy thrillers and such things, and crime novels. You can see from his wuxia fictions interactions with mysteries, for example. So yeah, I recommend those. That is what I'm currently engaging with. But
casting this light on your activity and your recommendation, I have one final question, and that would be: is there maybe a question or a topic that keeps pestering you, or a question or a topic that just keeps coming back to you, playing on your mind?
Topic that I think I've spoken a little bit about that before. The reminders that I'm getting more now, more of kind of the unhelpful polarizations, kind of attachment to national politics regarding my work, whether I'm on a panel, even I would have some kind of comments, remarks unsolicited from even other panelists about
Yeah.
addressing the addressing me as if I'm responsible for the government
Yeah.
and not just a writer who is trying to promote cultures who are created by individuals with different individual minds. That's the and something I wish I didn't need to deal with.
Yeah.
There is the other one of kind of people thinking that everything that comes out of China is soft power, and that really is not helpful, not just for my work, but for the writers whose underrepresented voices I'm trying to improve, for all of those artists and filmmakers, the designers and illustrators or writers who are creators.
Yeah.
And they created this work because they wanted to, or they needed to, and it really kind of lessens that to say it's all soft power.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
promoting some sort of government agenda, which is very far from it.
Yeah, it speaks a bit to this spirit of the times of seeing everything in terms of conspiracy theory, big government, deep state, all these different reductive frameworks, instead of recognizing the individuality and cultural specificity of the people.
Exactly. I think not just for Asian culture, I think in the world in general and in the conflict zones, I think we need a nuanced approach and kind of patience with putting things into context and maybe putting ourselves into other people's perspectives a bit more and trying to understand it within a nuanced view. That would really be helpful.
Yeah. Xueting, thank you so much for giving us your time and your fascinating thoughts and experiences as an editor and translator of Chinese short fiction. This has been truly, genuinely fascinating insights, and yeah, very happy to have a larger viewership. See you, all these things you have to say.
Thank you. It's been a very interesting discussion.
Thank you. And thank you to all our viewers of Black, Brown, Yellow, White. I hope, or we hope, you've been able to enjoy this interview, and then see you back next time. Take care. Bye-bye.